This is Damian Macy of the Marshall Public Library, Friends of the Library program. And this is our oral history project, and I'm in the lovely home of Ken Smith out at 110 Highland Drive. And we're going to be talking to him today about his experience in his past life. So with that, Ken, you're on.
Okay, this is Kenneth Rogers Smith, and I was born in Anderson Township, born at home, the fifth of 6 children, and lived in the country. And the reason my middle name is Rogers is because there was a Doc Rogers at Martinsville that delivered me, so they named me after him. And we lived in the country. My dad was a farming, and it was back in the old farm style. I can remember it farmed with horses, and there were a few tractors around then, but he still farmed with horses. And we lived there until I was 5 years old, and then we moved to the Clarksville area for 1 year, and I started school at Clarksville. I didn't go to kindergarten because when you were in the rural, you didn't go. If you were in town and could get to the school, you did. But so I didn't go to kindergarten, and we moved into Marshall then later in the first grade, and I went to the North Side School for 3 years, and then in the middle of the third grade we moved. My dad bought his first home. We'd always rented, and he bought his first home on South 2nd Street, so I transferred to the South School and went there, and of course went to the Marshall Junior High and the Marshall High School, and graduated from high school in 1962. Had a very good school years and a good education. In high school, I was active in athletics, and in the class officers, I was the president my junior year, vice president my senior year, and was rated, I guess, 16th out of 105 in the class. But was not able to go on to college. My father passed away, and at that point in time, it wasn't explained to me about student loans and things like that. So I had to work.
Even at that time, there were not a lot of loans available. The program system had not been developed, I don't think.
No. I had the grades and the desire, but it didn't work. But I started out backing up a little bit in life. I started out working at a pretty young age. I got a paper route when I was in the 6th grade, and I kept that paper route about 3 years, and made some pretty good money at it. I bought my own bicycles and got a lot of tips from the customers, and I thought I did a pretty good job of taking care of the newspapers and being on time and everything. And then I got to where I wanted to work out a little more, so I give that paper out to my brother. And I worked in summers for a farmer in the Clarksville area by the name of Harry Murphy, and he did custom baling of hay and straw, and I worked nearly every day if it hadn't rained or whatever, Monday through Friday, with him and another kid that was a year or two older than me named Butch Baker, and we rode the wagons and stacked the hay, and
hay is a tough job.
It's a tough job. I done that about 3 summers probably, and sometimes it was before I had a car, and there was times that I had to ride my bicycle out to wherever we were going to be baling hay that day. But it was a good job, and Harry was good to work for. And, it was a good experience because I was wanting to build up muscles to play football. And then after that, there was a girl in our class by the name of Pam Abel, and her dad and uncle had a large farm and raised hogs. And between my junior and senior year, she asked me what I was going to do that summer, and I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm looking." And she said, "Well, why don't you go talk to my dad?" And I said, "Well, I've never really drove a tractor or anything." And she said, "Well, you go talk to my dad." So I did. And he said, "Yeah, they would train me and teach me." And so I started out at $35 a week and worked from 7 in the morning till 6 in the evening, and half a day on Saturday. And they furnished me gasoline for my car, and it was on their pump. It was a farm service pump, and it was marked 26 cents per gallon. But so it was a good job for a kid, and I worked those 2 summers, and then I worked a year and a half for them after I got out of high school. Until I could determine for sure what I was going to do, and save up a little money, and then I decided to go to barber college. And so I went to barber college in Decatur, Illinois, and came back and worked for Barney Millhouse for 4 years, and then I quit and went to Terre Haute and worked at the Pillsbury plant for a year. But I didn't really like the confinement of that. So I went back to the barber business for 3 more years. And at that point in time, I realized that that the long hair had came in style, and so I wasn't making the money I wanted to and had no benefits. So I talked to my former Little League coach by the name of John Schonk, and he was a production manager at Velsico. And so I filled out an application, and I got a job and went to work at Velsico. And that was in 1972. I worked there about 6.5 years. In the process, I'd worked about 3 weeks, and we had a couple tanks explode, and I was burnt in a fire and spent 9 days 9 days in the hospital. And anyway, I've survived that, and went back to work, and like I said, worked there 6.5 years, and they had a pretty large, lengthy strike, and went out on strike on December the 18th, I think. But anyway, it got up into March, and I decided that the strike was just going to be longer and maybe indefinite, and I needed some income, and I needed something in the future a little more secure than that, because the plant had some environmental issues, and I didn't figure it was going to last very long. So anyway, I happened to belong to the Masonic Lodge, and one night after one of our meetings, talking to a friend of mine named Charlie Van Oven, and he said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just getting by right now. I'm going to try to get a job someplace other than Velsico." And I said, "I think I'm going to go over to Eli Lilly and put in an application." And he said, "Well, he said, I'm a supervisor at Lilly. And I said, well, I didn't know that, Charlie. I didn't even know where you worked. And he said, I don't help many people because I don't want to, if they don't turn out good, it reflects on me. And I said, I understand that. But I said, I don't think you'll have to worry about it. So anyway, over the next month or so, I applied and was interviewed and took a physical and got on with Eli Lilly and Company, and worked there for 27 and a half years, and retired in 2005. And it was one of the best things that could have happened to me without a college education. It was a good job. It was challenging with having to learn computers that operated equipment and had to think like the computer. And it wasn't what I was used to. But anyway, it worked out as a very good job. They had a good profit sharing program, and it was very good job, and I appreciated that. And as we moved back, though, going backwards a few years, when I was working at Velsico, I had decided I wanted to run for the city council. And I didn't even really know the man I was running against. Had I known him, I wouldn't have ran against him. But I ran, and I ran against Kenneth Lau, and he beat me 3 votes. Oh, and it was the old-fashioned ballot counting, and we both stood there and watched him count, and he looked at me and said, do you want to recount? And I said, no, I've seen it all, and the best man won.
Do you know what year that was?
Oh, that was probably 72, I think, 72. And so then 2 years later, I ran again and won that term, and served that term. And then my wife and I built a home at the edge of town, and it was not in the city limits, so I didn't run again until, I get my years all messed up. But anyway, Dale McConkey was the alderman in our ward, and we annexed into the city. Les Literal was my neighbor, and we did some calculations that we thought we would have better road maintenance and cheaper utilities if we annexed into the city. So we polled our subdivision, and all but 2 agreed to annex in the city. So we did annex in. And then when Dale was a good alderman, and he decided to not run, and my brother George was a superintendent of utilities for the city, and he came to me and said, why don't you run? I said, well, I'll give it some thought. So I did, and I ran, and I won. And I think Dale's intentions was to not run for, and then at the next mayoral election he was going to run for mayor, and he passed away. And
was that the subdivision out by the Lincoln Motel where Judy lives now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then this subdivision here.
Okay.
That's the one we brought in. Was this one?
This one. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the city had a disposal plant right behind my property, yeah, and it was in the city, so we could annex in because we were contiguous, and so we did. And I served 2 terms then as alderman from Ward 2, and then I lost an election, and I just thought, well, you know, I've served 12 years. That's enough. I'll be done with city politics, and it was an election where they changed the mayor. They changed it was a complete turnaround election, and but anyway, after couple of years, I got to following the city politics a little more, and the administration that was in, I looked at their audits, and a couple of the utilities had lost money 3 out of 4 years along there, and I had some renewed energy, and some people talked to me and said, "Why don't you run for mayor?" And I said, "Well, I think I will." So I did. I ran for mayor, and I ran against the sitting mayor and the mayor that was previous to him, and three-way election, and won that election pretty handily. And so I had some people that were close to me, and we had a plan of what we wanted to do if we did get elected, and so we worked pretty hard at it and achieved most of that, and then in 4 years I ran again against Cammie Sanders, and that election was really close, but I did win it. There was a lot of controversy over the Harlan Hall, and my brother's still working for the city. He hadn't retired yet, and the change of a chief of police, some different things, a little bit of baggage, I guess you might call it, that I had. But but anyway, we won that election, and we went on for the next 4 years. And
So Ken, was that your third term then that you're talking about now?
Second term as mayor.
Second term as mayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you did.
I had 3 terms as.
You did serve 3 terms as mayor altogether.
No.
2.
2.
Okay.
2. Yeah, 2 terms. My wife and my family and me, we had determined if I won the second term that was going to be it. So there's been a few second thoughts on that decision, but anyway, we in my mind, and I thought I did a good job as mayor. I put in a lot of time, much more time than any other mayor had previously done, and we achieved several things. But so that ended up my political career. And when I stepped out as mayor, I pretty much decided to stay out of any limelight and let the new administration have the best chance of succeeding, and without me looking over the shoulder. I have been contacted by them a few times for advice, but anyway, there's some issues that I think I would have done differently.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So now, Ken, as you are, quote, free, you have some hobbies, I think, and some things that you're interested in. What are those?
Well, all my life I've been a hunter, and that's my real hobby. I like to train my own dogs. I've raised several litters of pups and trained dogs and bought dogs, and I really enjoy that. And the bad thing is there's getting to be fewer and fewer quail, and that's what I primarily like to hunt. But I'm as long as I can walk and go, I'm going to do that. But that's primarily a fall and winter sport. And so my son and I, several years ago, he was into demolition derbies, and that's a pretty rough life. And I decided we needed to get him interested in something besides demolition derbies. And I had a cousin that was into antique tractor pulling, and so we went over to Casey. They had a place there where they pulled and had a club, and so we went over and watched that, and we got interested in that, and we purchased a tractor and got into the antique tractor pulling business, and And now about 16, 17 years later, we're still doing it and have more tractors. I think we have a total of 5 tractors now.
Wow.
So, and it's even down to my grandkids now. They're into the tractor pulling with us and driving and learning the deal. So that's.
Where do you keep those 5 tractors?
We've got a rental building that out at Tom Stone's right now. That we've got our tractors in there and spare tires and parts and stuff. And then at my son's house, he has it's about a 30 by 40 building that we've got our tools and equipment in there. And so in the summer when we're pulling, we move the tractors that are active out to his house, and we don't have to run back and forth much to the rental building. They just used it for winter storage.
You mentioned dogs and training them. Have those been more of a hobby as opposed to a pet?
Yes. They're not inside dogs.
Okay.
They're outside dogs. I've never brought them in the cold weather. I've filled their box full of straw, and they're English setters breed, and they've got fairly long hair, and I've never had a problem. I've got electric waterers, so they've always got fresh water. It don't freeze over, and so yeah, they are a hobby. They get treated pretty well though. They don't miss any meals, but they're not house dogs.
So when you're gone, does your son take care of them?
Yes, and in fact he does. But the last 2 winters that we've gone to Florida, I've had my granddaughter to do it.
Another generation there.
Yeah, and I pay her, so it's a way she can earn some money. And actually, she did a better job than my son did. And I told him so too. I guess I didn't mention my family. I heard you interview my wife, and you got it all in there, but you may need it on this.
Yeah, why don't you?
Also, well, my dad was Warren C. Smith, and my mother was Cecil May Sanders Smith, and then I had there was 5 boys and 1 girl in our family. I don't really need them named or.
If you'd like.
They are, start from the oldest to the youngest would be Harold was the oldest, and Gerald is the next, and my sister Laura, and then a brother Wiley, and then me, and the youngest brother George. And my oldest brother is 84 years old now. But we have in the last 2 years lost 2 members. The oldest brother passed, and my sister passed. So there's 4 of us now, and we still get together 2 or 3 times a year, and we communicate by phone and email. And yeah. And then I have a son and a daughter, Curtis Neal, and he's 44 years old, and he's the director of recreation at the Robinson Correctional Facility. And my daughter is Chandra, and she's 42 years old, and she's the operating manager of the water treatment facility for the city of Decatur. And
you said that age for Curtis. I can't realize it because I was treasurer of the 281 Boy Scout Committee. I think he was a youngster and earning his Eagle Scout.
Yes, you helped him on badges. Wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah. In fact, I think I might have missed it. I think in March he was born in '70. He turned 45. So
I can't realize that.
That doesn't seem.
No,
doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right. And then he has 2 children, Vanessa, and she is 17, and Nathan is 14. And I enjoy. My grandson is involved in all sports, and so we go to his events. He's has a talent to kicking the football. He can kick. At his age, he can kick field goals, short field goals, and extra points, and so anyway, we follow his sporting events.
Well, you're fortunate they're right here in town too, where you can take part in that.
Yes.
In your education, political environment, or whatever, was there an individual or someone who really influenced you, or maybe helped steer you into a positive direction?
Well, I was not very fond of the first couple of mayors I served under. And but when I served under Dick Smitley, I thought he did the job of mayor and representing Marshall in a very good way. Another person, and I'm not really going to an older person here, is my brother George. Worked for the city for many years, and probably done more for the city of Marshall than all the mayors added together. And he gave me several ideas that he thought would be good for the town, but he couldn't get involved in politics to do it. And he was, he's about 3 years younger than me, but he kind of mentored me a little bit. And going back way back as a child, there was a gentleman here in town that was named Paul Walker. He ran the Western Auto Store. Mm-hmm. And he went to our church. And our family was raised, maybe not poverty level, but very, very poor. And he helped my dad at Christmas with, he give my dad or sold him some toys that somebody had bought, and evidently they thought it was broken or something. And he gave us some toys, and if it hadn't been for that, we might not have had any. And as I got a little older, and I'm sorry that he passed away before he passed away at a fairly young age, but he was a good man. He was a deacon in our church, and he lived what he preached. I mean, he was very good, and I respected him. And then another man was named Roy Crocker. Roy went to our church, the Baptist church, and I got old enough. Roy belonged to the Masonic Lodge. In fact, so did Roy Crocker or Paul Walker, and I kind of thought they were a good example of an adult, a person. And I joined the Masonic Lodge because of them, and it was very good. I was active in the Masonic Lodge. I was the master twice, and but they were my dad did not like the Masons. He didn't like them because of the Shriners. Back in those days, the Shriners were pretty well known to come to town and drink it up and just carry on, and he thought that's so he didn't think much of it. But anyway, he was dead and gone when I but anyway, those are two men in life that I thought a lot of.
That's it. It seems like just about everyone has one or two people that really kind of help steer them in the path that they chose.
Yeah, I thought if I could be as good a man as them, it'd be okay.
Ken, is there a historical event that's taken place in your lifetime that you said, boy, that just really changed my outlook on life or changed my direction?
Well, you mean something personal that happened, or
No, historically, anything, even anywhere in the world.
oh, well, um, I don't know. I'm a little bit of a history buff, but just recently I've got involved in reading books about World War II. I was only born in 1944, so I didn't live through World War II. But as I read some of the things that happened then, I just can't believe it. And when you read about our own country, the Civil War,
Oh, gosh.
how foolish that was and a waste of 700 and some thousand people, it makes you think. As far as personally, an event, well, the one best thing that happened to me is when I got my job at Eli Lilly. That changed my life, and was able to be successful enough between my wife and I that we can go and do things now that we never ever dreamed of. As far as in Marshall, I really think a couple events that I was involved in as mayor, not just because I was mayor, but it's because the city decided to do it, was when we had the great race come through here. Yeah. 3 times. And when they decide to come back to your community, you've done something to impress them. And I think the town came together for that event, and all the old historic cars that came through.
Oh,
I think it was one of the greatest things I was involved in.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, is there an invention or a machine or something that has really, my gosh, you think just made the difference in the way we live? Maybe the way you live.
Yeah. I think the invention of electricity can just surpasses everything. I've been through Edison's museum 3 or 4 times down there, and what that man come up with and his ideas, and then what could we do without electricity? We could live without it. The Amish do, it's just so.
And I think the real emphasis of that happens when we have even at 20 or 30 minutes outage.
Right.
Everything came to come to a screeching halt.
Right.
And even the grocery store. Any store anymore, it almost ceases to operate.
They close because they can't check you out.
Right. And the doors don't even.
Yeah. Yeah, it just controls everything.
Well, Ken, it's sure been great talking to you, and I enjoy learning about some of your family and history. And I'll ask the question that I usually do of most people. If you were living in or visited another country, and I know you have visited some, and you were trying to tell someone about Marshall and where you live and how you live, maybe why they might want to live there, what would you say to them?
Well, I would tell them that it's a small rural town in east central Illinois that's in a country setting, and that it's a very well managed town. They have their own utilities, so they control their own rates. It's clean, very clean. People are helpful whenever there's a disaster, a fire or anything. People come together and they take care of that family. And I think it's a good setting. It's it's right on the national road that was built to open up the West, and so we were part of that development. And it's just a town that when I got my job at Eli Lilly, my wife and I, it's a 35-mile drive one way. And so we drove over to Clinton and a couple other towns closer to it, and drove around and looked their towns over. And the city of Clinton, I'm not begrudging them, but every street was full of potholes. It just didn't appeal to me, and I told my wife, I said, I'll drive the 35 miles. We're living in Marshall. Good school system. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it's just a nice, clean, quiet town. Very little crime. A good place to raise kids, and a good place to be retired and live in.
That's a good summary, Ken, and I think certainly your period of time that you were mayor, you made some significant contributions to the community and to the people, and helped maintain and probably increase our standard of living a great deal too.
Yes.
And also to encourage and develop some of our history. And that's exactly the purpose of our visit today, is to put some of the things that people have been experiencing down where future generations are going to be able to listen to them.
And I might mention too, aside from economical things as mayor, that one of my greatest achievements, and it was my goal, and I even campaigned on it my first time I ran, is the city owns Harlan Hall. We're going to complete it. It took longer than expected. It took many, many volunteers, just like yourself, to get it done. I didn't do so much as physical labor there, but I sure did help raise money and get grants to get it completed. And I think it's one of the big assets for the town if it's used properly.
And that's something that's been there for many, many years, and it's in the good shape now that it should be able to last and continue for a lot of years. Again, kind of disappointing the way it's not being used, but maybe sometime that will change and turn around.
Well, and you know, they're coming up with this mural project, and I am helping on that. And I'm dedicated enough to Harlan Hall that I've bought the mural that's going to be painted for Harlan Hall. I'm paying for that myself. I want to see that portrayed properly.
And do you know where that's going to be yet?
No. Okay. No, we haven't got the site, but in fact, I need a little bit of your help on it as what to put in the mural, whether you want like the way it used to be and the way it is now, like a tube portrayal, or just the way, or how to do the mural. But yeah.
Well, again, I summarize, Ken. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been interesting, and certainly appreciate your contribution to our oral history project.